And maybe that's why I stayed with Gavin for as long as I did. Because I thought if I just gave enough, they'd see me, that he'd protect me, that he'd finally say, "This is the woman I love, and that's enough." But he never did. And the worst part? I blamed myself for a long time. I thought maybe I wasn't enough. Maybe I didn't fit in because I wasn't born into wealth. Maybe I was the outsider who'd never belong. But that's not the truth. The truth is, they needed me to be smaller, so their world could feel bigger. And I let them. Until the night Marissa said those words. Until Gavin didn't flinch. Until I walked out, heels echoing like thunder. That night wasn't the end of something. It was the beginning of something much bigger. 3 days passed. No calls. No messages. Not even a simple, "Are you okay?" I waited. I thought maybe Gavin needed time to gather his thoughts. Maybe he'd realized what had happened and was trying to figure out how to fix it. Maybe, just maybe, he'd show up at my door, flowers in hand, apology on his lips. But nothing came. On the 4th day, I broke. I called him. He picked up on the 3rd ring. His voice was flat, distant. "Hey." "Hey," I echoed. "So, are we going to talk about what happened at your mom's?" A pause. A sigh. Then, "Emily, I don't want to fight." I blinked. "I'm not trying to fight, Gavin. What Marissa said was cruel. And the fact that no one said anything, especially you." "I didn't agree with her," he interrupted. "But I wasn't going to cause a scene." I swallowed. "So your silence was what?" "Keeping the peace." He didn't answer right away. Then, with measured calm, he said, "You know how my family is. They're particular. They've always had concerns." "Concerns?" I repeated, stunned. "It's just your background. Your job. The way you sometimes challenge people in conversation. They think you're a little intense." I felt my throat tighten. "So, basically, I embarrass you." "That's not what I said." "It's exactly what you meant." Another long pause. Then he said it. The sentence that shattered everything left between us. "Maybe it's best if we take some space. Just for a while." I didn't speak. Couldn't speak. I stared at the wall across from me, the framed photo of us at the lake house. He was holding me, sun on our faces, arms wrapped tightly around my waist. I remembered thinking, this could be my forever. "Emily." My voice was hollow. "Wow." "I'm not ending things," he said quickly, like a man afraid of losing control. "I'm just asking for space. Because your family thinks I'm a gold digger? It's more complicated than that." "No, Gavin. It's actually very simple." My voice, for once, didn't shake. "You made a choice. You didn't stand up for me when it mattered. And now you're choosing to disappear instead of apologize. That's not fair." I hung up. I knew if I stayed on the call 1 second longer, I'd cry. And I didn't want him to hear it. Not this time. I sat in the silence that followed, feeling everything and nothing, all at once. My stomach churned. My hands trembled. I had no idea what came next, only that something inside me had permanently cracked. Later that evening, a message popped up. "Loretta Fairchild. Emily, I think it's best we all have some breathing room. You're clearly overwhelmed. Maybe when you've calmed down, we can discuss everything like adults." I didn't reply. The next day, I got an invitation in the mail from Marissa. It was for her engagement party, held at her fiancé's estate. In bold script on the envelope was written, "Not me. Not Emily. Not even an implied +1. It was deliberate. A message." I laughed. Not out of amusement. Out of sheer disbelief. The kind of laugh that comes when you realize the gloves were never on to begin with. They'd always viewed me as temporary. A phase. A story Gavin would eventually outgrow. A few hours later, my coworker Sonia caught me zoning out in the office break room. I hadn't told anyone what was going on yet, but I must have looked a wreck. "You okay?" she asked, pouring herself coffee. I nodded. "Just tired." She raised an eyebrow. "From what? Smashing it at court this week? Girl, you're on fire." I smiled weakly. Then she added, Not that it's any of my business, but whoever's making you look like you've got something heavy on your back, let it go. You don't need that kind of weight. That hit deeper than I expected. I went home that night and stared at the apartment Gavin and I used to share. It was mine now. Technically, it always had been. I'd signed the lease under my name. Paid more than half the rent too, especially during the months his investments didn't hit. But he always acted like it was his space, his decor, his rules. And yet, now that he was gone, it finally felt like mine. I lit a candle, poured myself a glass of wine, and for the first time in weeks, I felt my shoulders relax. Not because I was okay, but because I was done pretending I was okay for them. I started going through old photos that night, and as I flipped through the smiling faces, the brunches, the holidays, I noticed something. In every group photo, I was always on the edge. Never in the center. Never pulled in. Never fully included. Even in the life I'd tried so hard to fit into, I was still kept on the outside. And finally, I'd had enough. I didn't tell anyone. Not my friends. Not my coworkers. Not even my neighbor, Julie, who always seemed to know everyone's business before it happened. I just disappeared. Not from life. From them. I blocked Gavin's number. I archived the shared Google Photos folder we'd kept since our first vacation. I deleted the recurring calendar reminders for his family's birthdays. His mother's was next week. Instead of canceling plans, I simply didn't show up. I let the silence speak. Let the absence say what words never could. They didn't call. They didn't check. They didn't ask if I was okay. Which only confirmed what I already knew. To them, I was never really part of the story. Just an accessory. An upgrade in appearance and accomplishment, but not in worth. I started small. Unlinking my bank account from the Fairchild Foundation's charity app, something Gavin had set up so I could help the family cause with automatic donations. For 2 years, I'd been giving monthly, without so much as a thank you.
Gone.
Next, I stopped liking or commenting on their social media posts. No more smiley faces under Marissa's filtered brunch pics or Loretta's garden selfies. My absence was subtle, but enough to make them wonder. Then came the quiet revenge no one expected. I called my leasing agent and made it official. I was buying my own place. Downtown. Something bright. Something clean. Something mine. It wasn't impulsive. I'd been saving since college. Not because I was preparing for heartbreak, but because I knew better than to ever put my fate in someone else's hands. Gavin used to tease me about my emergency fund. Babe, you act like you're planning to run off and start a secret life. I'd smile, sip my coffee and say, maybe I am. Well, now I was. I found a condo 2 blocks from the courthouse. Minimalist style. 2 bedrooms. Hardwood floors. A tiny balcony that caught the afternoon light just right. It wasn't massive, but it was beautiful. And more than that, it felt safe. I paid in cash. Every dollar I'd earned from late nights, overtime, and thankless cases. Every cent I'd saved while his family rolled their eyes at my budgeting habits. Every bit of me that had been underestimated now stood tall inside those walls. But here's where the story starts to shift. About 3 weeks after I moved, I got a call from my bank. Hi, Ms. Rivera. We just wanted to confirm an unusual deposit that came through this morning. It's from the Fairchild Estate Escrow Office. My stomach turned. Excuse me? Looks like a check refund for some event venue. Canceled last minute. The original payment was under your name. Amount: $4,200. I blinked. They put it under my name? Yes, ma'am. The event description says Marissa and Carson engagement dinner. I let out a slow laugh. They'd used my name, probably assuming I wouldn't notice. Or maybe they thought I'd be flattered. I told the bank to return it. That night, I finally opened the text messages from Gavin I'd been ignoring. Gavin, can we talk? Gavin, I think we should meet.
Just coffee.
Gavin, you look good. Saw your new photo. You always were great at landing on your feet. Gavin, Mom says hi. I didn't reply. Because for once, I didn't need to. I had something more powerful than closure. I had peace. And in that peace, I started growing. I joined a local women's professional network. Met other lawyers, CEOs, nurses, artists, women who had also been underestimated,
Dismissed.
laughed at, called too much. One woman named Diana, a tech investor, pulled me aside after a brunch event. "You're Emily Rivera, right?" I blinked.
Yeah.
"How do you know?"
She grinned.
"I watched you in court last year. The Simmons custody case. You annihilated that defense attorney. What was his name? Philip something?" I laughed. "Philip Jacobs.
Yeah.
You were a force. Never forgot that." That small moment stayed with me for days. Not because she flattered me, but because for once, I was recognized not for who I was dating or who I impressed, but for what I did. For who I was. My silence was no longer weakness. It was clarity. Every time I stopped myself from replying to Gavin or Loretta or the occasional fake-friendly DM from Marissa, it was like another brick placed on the foundation of my new life. The more I withdrew, the more I saw clearly. I used to think forgiveness was something I owed them. But now I realized forgiveness is something I owed myself. Not to excuse what they did, but to let go of carrying it. Let them think what they want. Let them rewrite the story. Let them believe I was the villain in their version of events. Because in my story, I was finally the hero. I didn't need to prove it. I just needed to live it. The email came on a Tuesday. Subject line: a long overdue thank you. I almost deleted it. It came from an address I didn't recognize. Claire Montgomery at havenlaw.org. No company name, no newsletter format. Just plain text. Curious, I clicked it open. "Hi, Emily. You probably don't remember me. My name is Claire Montgomery. I'm a legal intern at Haven Women's Network, and I sat in on your court appearance during the Simmons custody trial last summer. You were breathtaking. Not just brilliant, but kind. I remember the way you spoke to the mother, how you looked her in the eye, made her feel human. That case stuck with me all year. I decided to pursue family law because of you. I recently found out that you were dating Gavin Fairchild. Small world, right? I interned with the Fairchild Foundation this spring, and, well, I overheard some things about you. Honestly, it made me furious. I wanted to reach out and say this. You are nothing like what they said. You are more. Thank you for showing me what power can look like without cruelty. Warmly,
Claire.
I read the message twice, then a third time. Something about it unraveled me. Maybe it was the fact that someone saw me, someone without bias or expectations. Someone who remembered my work, not my boyfriend, not my clothes, not my background. I hadn't cried in weeks.
But I did now.
Not because I was sad, but because I finally felt seen. That weekend, I received another unexpected message. This time from Gavin's cousin, Jamie Fairchild. We weren't close. She'd always been nice to me at family functions, offering wine refills, making polite small talk when the room grew icy. But she'd also never really stepped in. She stayed on the sidelines, just like the rest of them.
Until now.
Her text was short, but it hit hard. Jamie Fairchild. I know I should have said something sooner. I just wanted you to know, I always admired you. The way you held your own in that family, it wasn't easy. I'm sorry they treated you like a guest in a house you helped build. I stared at that final sentence. A guest in a house you helped build. That was it. That was exactly what it felt like. I had poured time, energy, patience, grace, and still been treated as less than. And now, finally, cracks were forming in the illusion. Others were starting to see it too. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about them. The carefully polished image, the charity galas, the philanthropy posts, the values. People were beginning to notice how performative it all was. One of my old law school classmates forwarded me a gossip blog screenshot titled, "Golden Family, Tarnished Secrets? Fairchild Matriarch Under Fire for Employee Discrimination Allegation." Apparently, a former assistant had gone public with her mistreatment under Loretta Fairchild. The story hadn't gone viral yet, but it was spreading. And then came the moment I didn't expect. At a networking event 2 weeks later, I found myself face-to-face with Carson Meyer, Marissa's fiancé. He was charming in the fake, polished way rich men tend to be. But that night, he looked tired. deflated, like someone who just had a long conversation with a very difficult person. "You're Emily, right?" he asked. I gave a curt nod. "Depends who's asking." He smiled, trying to ease the tension. "Carson. Marissa's, well, I guess you'd call me her plus one. Right." He took a sip of his drink. "She told me a lot of things about you." "I'm sure she did. She said you used to hang around because you thought Gavin was your ticket." I stared at him. He shifted. "But I've met a lot of social climbers. You're not one of them." My eyebrows raised. "You don't even know me. I've seen your name on Legal Opinions. I've read your case summaries. Marissa can barely finish a podcast." I blinked. Carson leaned in slightly. "She's terrified of you, by the way. That's why she lashes out. You're everything she pretends to be." I didn't respond. Because what could I say? I wasn't looking for validation from the enemy's fiancé, but here he was, laying bare the insecurity I'd sensed all along. That was the moment I knew. I'd never been the gold digger. I'd been the mirror. And they couldn't stand the reflection. They don't come back with apologies. They come back with strategy. It started with a voicemail from Loretta Fairchild, the woman who had once looked me up and down at Christmas and whispered to Gavin, "Is this really what you want?" Now she sounded pleasant,
Polished.
like a rehearsed actress. "Emily, darling, I just wanted to reach out personally and say I hope you're doing well. We've all been talking, and, well, perhaps we were too quick to judge. Maybe we can sit down for lunch sometime? Just us girls." Us girls? I didn't even know she remembered my name. I stared at the message, heart steady. No flutter of hope. No anger even. Just a kind of exhausted amusement. But it didn't stop there. Next came Gavin. He texted at midnight like he used to when he was trying to guilt me after an argument. I messed up.
I see that now.
I let their words cloud my judgment. "You were always the best thing that ever happened to me. Please let me explain." Just once. Then another message. "My mom's trying. She's not perfect, but she's trying. We all are. Don't shut us out." Shut them out? They pushed me out and changed the locks. I ignored it. 3 days later, Marissa posted a picture of her engagement ring again, but this time the caption said, "Surround yourself with people who lift you up, not tear you down. Love wins." I almost laughed. She never used to post vague inspirational quotes. She didn't need to, not when she had all the power.
Now?
She was losing control of the narrative. And people were noticing. Underneath her photo, comments began rolling. Funny how that wasn't your energy when you were mocking your cousin's girlfriend at the fundraiser. Maybe love wins, but girl, so does karma. It was subtle, but it was enough to shake their curated world. I began receiving messages from mutual acquaintances, people who had once sat silently as I was ignored at family events or left out of invitations. "Hey Emily, I just wanted to say I always admired how you handle their crap.
You didn't deserve any of that."
I never knew the whole story, but I'm glad people are seeing what really happened. It wasn't full-blown redemption, but it was something better. Accountability. And that's when Loretta tried again. This time, it was an email with the subject line, "A fresh start. Dear Emily, I know we've had our differences, but I want you to know I never intended to hurt you. You brought so much poise and elegance to our family, and I see now that perhaps I didn't acknowledge that enough. I believe in second chances, and I'd love to invite you to our home for a small, intimate dinner with the family. Let's turn the page. Warmly, Loretta." No apology. No ownership. Just a PR move disguised as grace. Turn the page? They were trying to edit the chapter where they made me the villain. I could see it clearly now. They didn't miss me. They missed the optics. They missed the convenience. They missed having someone to make them look more evolved than they really were.
So, I didn't respond.
And when I didn't respond, they panicked. Marissa sent a private DM. "I think we got off on the wrong foot. Maybe I said things that were harsh. But I was just being protective of my cousin. You know how families are. Protective? Calling me a gold digger in front of 20 people at a charity brunch was protective?" I left the message on read. Hours later, she followed up with, "Can you just delete the Twitter thread? People are twisting everything. We're all getting hate now, And it's not fair. Fair? Fair was sitting through 5 family dinners where they joked about my humble beginnings, while I poured their wine and smiled like I was made of stone. Fair was spending holidays in a room full of people who treated me like a service employee. Now, finally, the scales were tipping, not because I sought revenge, but because I stopped protecting them from the truth. And when the truth is this ugly, it doesn't need to scream. It just needs to exist. They wanted to reset, but there was no reset button. You don't get to light a house on fire and then hand me a broom. You don't get to rewrite history just because the public eye is watching now. You don't get to call me back in when the cameras are rolling, because I was never a prop. I was always the main character. You just refused to see it. It wasn't the big gestures that healed me. It was the quiet ones. It was the letter that arrived on a rainy Wednesday, slipped into my mailbox between junk mail and a utilities bill. The envelope was cream-colored and handwritten. No return address. I opened it cautiously, expecting some anonymous jab. But inside was something else entirely. You don't know me, but I've known of you for a long time. My name is Mrs. Eleanor Blake. I'm 82 years old, and I live on the corner of Rosemont and West 6th. Years ago, I worked as a guidance counselor at Ridgeway High, your high school. I remember you, not just because of your grades, but because of how you treated people. There was a girl in your class, Amanda Palmer. You probably remember her. She had a hard time fitting in. People teased her, ignored her, but you didn't. You invited her to sit with you. You helped her with math. You smiled at her like she mattered. I saw it all. She's my granddaughter.
She's a lawyer now.
And guess what? She told me that you inspired her. She never forgot your kindness. Neither did I. I don't know what this letter will mean to you, but I wanted you to know that all those little things you did, they added up. You've already changed lives. Quietly. Powerfully. Thank you for being the kind of woman the world needs more of. With love and admiration. I pressed the letter to my chest and sat in silence for a long time. The kind of silence that feels full, not empty. This was what mattered. Not the Instagram posts. Not the approval of some legacy-obsessed family. But this quiet ripple effect. These moments where kindness echoed years later. I thought about Amanda Palmer. She hadn't been in my thoughts for years. I didn't help her for praise. I just couldn't bear to watch someone be invisible. I had no idea it changed her life. And now, decades later, her grandmother was reminding me that I mattered. Not because of who I dated. Not because of where I lived. But because of who I was when no one was watching. The following weekend, I was walking out of a local bookstore when I heard someone call my name. Emily. I turned. It was Claire Montgomery, the intern who had emailed me weeks ago. She smiled sheepishly. I didn't expect to see you here. I didn't even know you lived in this part of the city. I do now, I smiled. It's quieter. She held up a tote bag. I just picked up a book on courtroom psychology, trying to sharpen my witness examination skills. I laughed. You'll need them. She hesitated, then said, Can I tell you something? Of course. I almost dropped out last semester. Law school was getting to me. I felt invisible.
Lost.
Like I didn't belong in those rooms full of legacy kids and professors who didn't even know my name. I nodded. I know that feeling well. But then I rewatched the Simmons trial. I watched how you spoke to that mother. Not with pity. Not like you were above her. You met her where she was. You gave her dignity. Claire's eyes shimmered. I realized I didn't want to be the kind of lawyer who wins at all costs. I wanted to be the kind that restores something.
I didn't know what to say.
So I just placed my hand on her arm and said, You already are. That night, I sat on my couch, barefoot, wrapped in a cardigan with chamomile tea in hand, and I realized something. I didn't need a stage to be powerful. I didn't need Marissa's approval, or Loretta's smiles, or Gavin's regret. I had planted seeds in people I never even remembered planting in. And now they were blooming in front of me. Because that's the thing about kindness. It doesn't always return from the direction you gave it. But it does return. Always. It finds you when you least expect it. Like a letter from a stranger. Like a smile from a young lawyer on the rise. like a thank you whispered years after the fact. And in that moment, I felt whole,
Seen.
valued, not for what I had endured, but for what I had given. And not a single Fairchild was in sight. It was a Saturday morning in late spring when the knock came. Not loud, not urgent, just patient. I had just watered the lavender on my windowsill and was settling into my second cup of coffee when I heard it.
Knock.
Knock.
Pause.
I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened the door slowly. No fear, just quiet awareness. There they were. Loretta Fairchild,
Gavin.
Marissa, all standing in a perfectly arranged triangle like they were posing for a family redemption tour. Loretta wore pearls and gilt. Gavin looked down at his shoes. Marissa had sunglasses pushed to the top of her head and that same strained, polite smile I'd seen 1,000 times before. Emily, Loretta said, her voice coated in sugary warmth, I know this is unexpected, but we were just in the area. Thought we'd stop by. They were never in this part of town. They didn't even know this part existed. Gavin cleared his throat. We just want to talk.
Properly.
Face to face. Marissa added, and maybe fix what's been broken. If you're willing.
There was no drama in me.
No anger. No trembling hands. Just clarity. The kind that comes after surviving a storm with no one but yourself to dry you off.
I didn't invite them in.
I didn't step outside. I stood in the doorway, firm, calm, and whole. I appreciate that you came, I said, voice even. Marissa took a hopeful step forward, but I held up a hand. Not aggressively, just softly. A boundary. But I don't think there's anything to fix, I continued. At least not on my end. Gavin's jaw clenched. You're really going to shut us out completely? I looked at him, and for the first time, I didn't see the man I used to love. I saw a man afraid to be held accountable. I'm not shutting anyone out, I said. I'm choosing peace. And that peace doesn't include reopening wounds just because it's convenient for you now. Loretta's voice cracked. We were wrong. We know that. Isn't that worth something? I gave a small, sad smile. It's worth your growth. And I hope you find it.
Truly.
But I don't owe you anything else. Marissa huffed. So that's it? After all the history? Yes, I said gently. Because history is not the same as connection. There was a long pause. Birds chirped in the distance. A neighbor's dog barked. The world kept spinning. And then I spoke the final word. A word that wasn't angry, wasn't bitter, just complete.
No.
Not shouted. Not cried. Just no. Because sometimes the most powerful closure isn't a confrontation. It's a decision. I didn't shut the door in their faces. I let them stand there, with all the chances they wasted, and I walked back inside with the sun warming my back. They didn't knock again. And I didn't turn around. Because healing doesn't always look like reconciliation. Sometimes it looks like freedom. If you've ever been called names you didn't earn, if you've ever had your kindness mistaken for weakness, your silence mistaken for guilt, your loyalty met with betrayal, then maybe you know what it feels like to be me. To be discarded for not fitting someone else's mold. To be called a gold digger for simply refusing to stay small. To be shamed for wanting more respect, more love, more truth. For the longest time, I thought I had to explain myself, defend myself, earn my place. In families, in relationships, in rooms that were never meant to hold me. But here's what I've learned. You do not owe anyone an explanation for outgrowing the limits they placed on you. You do not have to answer the door just because someone knocks with guilt. And you do not have to stay in the cycle just because you were born into it. People will call you things to distract from the parts of you that intimidate them. They'll label your independence as arrogance. They'll label your standards as greed. They'll label your confidence as manipulation.
Let them.
Because you know who you are. And in the end, that is what saved me. Not revenge. Not some public clapback. Just truth.
And peace.
And walking away from the noise. When I bought that house, the one Marissa used to host her garden parties in, I didn't do it to humiliate her. I did it to close a loop. to reclaim the part of me that had been constantly pushed aside. I paid in cash because I was tired of paying in dignity. And now I sit on the porch with a cup of tea, barefoot, sunlight dancing on my skin, and I finally understand. The real power was never in proving them wrong. The real power was in becoming someone who didn't need their permission to exist. So if you're watching this, if you've been called too loud, too ambitious, too emotional, too much, let me tell you something that took me years to believe. You're not too much. You're just too real for people who pretend. And the moment you stop shrinking yourself to make others comfortable, that's when your life begins. So take up space. Say no without guilt. And walk through this world like it already belongs to you. Because it does. She called me a gold digger, so I bought her house in cash. Let me know if you want the full draft compiled into a .docs or .pdf file, or if you'd like title/tagline/thumbnail suggestions for posting on YouTube or TikTok.